I am seeing a huge diversity of responses and reactions, both across multiple institutions, multiple countries, and within individual organizations. So you have anything from universities saying, we're embracing generative AI, we're embracing artificial intelligence beyond generative AI. We know our students need to be able to use these tools. They're going to be part of their world, and we're absolutely embracing it. We're encouraging our staff, we're encouraging our students to use them. To the other end of the spectrum, we are banning the use of generative AI and not encouraging students and staff to use these tools because we're concerned about academic integrity.
Sure.
So you've got the complete spectrum across, even within the same country, you have a complete spectrum, but there are very different reactions in different parts of the world.
Welcome to the Inner Game of Change podcast, where I explore the intricate layers of organizational change alongside insightful professionals. I am Ali Jama, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast. Today I am thrilled to introduce Professor Rose Luckin from University College London, a leading expert in educational technology and artificial intelligence. She is recognized globally for her contributions to the field, named one of the most influential people in education and among the top influential women in technology. Professor Rose's work includes providing expert evidence to policymakers. She is an accomplished author with notable works like Machine Learning and Human Intelligence and AI for School Teachers. I am grateful to have Rose chatting with me today about AI and its powerful potential, specifically in higher education. Well, Rose, thank you so much for joining me in the Inner Game of Change podcast. I'm eternally grateful for your time.
It's a pleasure. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Rose. Today we're going to talk about evolving world of AI and applications, and with a particular lens on higher education application of the potential capabilities of AI. But before we start chatting about this exciting topic, it will be fantastic to introduce yourself to my audience.
Thank you. Yes, I'm delighted to introduce myself. So I'm Rose Luckin. I've got about 30 years experience of working in the area of artificial intelligence in education. I'm a professor at University College London, and I'm also founder and chief executive of a company called EDUCATE Ventures Research that tries to help organizations, educational organizations, to leverage artificial intelligence to gain power, to be more efficient, to be more effective, to understand exactly what they are achieving through their enterprise, through their activity, through the endeavors of their communities. So it's a topic that's very close to my heart indeed. And during those 30 years, I've seen AI winters, AI springs, AI summers, and hey, whatever we're going to call what we've got now,
Yes.
which is certainly lots of energy around artificial intelligence.
Does that surprise you, Rose?
Not really. I'd been anticipating some kind of moment because if we look at the kind of cyclical nature of the way technology, we have our hype cycle, the classic Gartner curve that we know about.
Yes.
We had been through the enthusiasm, through the winter, we'd been building up enthusiasm. We'd seen increased power enabling more sophisticated algorithms. We'd seen the development of very sophisticated algorithms that could be run on these more powerful technologies. We've got increased data. And of course, modern machine learning, artificial intelligence needs data in order to learn. So all the ingredients were there. I think the piece of the puzzle that we saw a year ago was the scaled availability of powerful artificial intelligence for anybody with an internet connection. And that really brought about the current situation where there's lots of energy, some people might say a lot of hype, and I would probably agree, around artificial intelligence, but certainly a lot of interest, a lot of possibilities, and a lot of challenges. And I think particularly for people working in the education sector, whether that's in schools or higher education, or even in professional development and training.
It feels to me, Rose, that there was a lot of simmering that happened over the last number of years. But for whatever reason, there was an inflection point late last year. It's like almost somebody gave it permission to go big bang, and the impression that some people get now is like they were really surprised. But for me, and probably, highly likely for you, that is not a surprise. What we see today is the result of years and years of research and testing.
That's true. We've had artificial intelligence for many, many years.
Yeah.
It's always hard to pinpoint the precise starting point, but we could think of it as being the Dartmouth Conference in 1956, where 12 scientists gathered together to try and work out exactly how you could describe all of our cognitive processes. And those descriptions would be specific enough that we could then look to automate all of our cognitive processes and so create artificial intelligence. Yeah. That sounds a bit crazy now, but at the time, it seemed perfectly plausible. Yeah. And since that time, we've had many, many developments, many high points, many low points. And I think we are now at a point in time where the power of artificial intelligence has been scaled, has been available or made available to billions of people across the world. And we will get some great benefits from that, but it also brings some challenges. So I think I'm not surprised that we are in this particular space. I'm not surprised that it's generative AI that has brought about this difference, because it had been bubbling under. Large language models had been around since 2018. What we didn't have was this scaled availability for anybody and everybody, which really opens up the possibilities for many people to create new AI applications, for companies who are already creating AI applications to create them more quickly, more effectively, more efficiently. And that does bring about a head of steam, so to speak, when it comes to developing artificial intelligence applications. And as I've said, I think education is now being recognized as what one might call a use case. I'm not sure I like to see education like that. I think education is far too important to be considered merely a use case for artificial intelligence. But I think the situation has opened up conversations about artificial intelligence and education that only a few people were having previously. Now we have millions of people engaging in those conversations, and I think that's a good thing.
Those use cases, they are like the starting thinking process around how we maximize on the potential of AIs. Some use cases might be just really small, and some of them will be very ambitious. Before we go into this particular rabbit hole, I just want to ask, from your observation, what's the general feel in the higher education sector? Is there a level of apprehension about it, as some people might think? Because remember, higher education has got academics, researchers, staff. So a researcher will see the opportunity. A staff member might see that this is going to take over my job. What's your observation? I'm really curious to know about this.
I am seeing a huge diversity of responses and reactions, both across multiple institutions, multiple countries, and within individual organizations. So you have anything from universities saying, we're embracing generative AI, we're embracing artificial intelligence beyond generative AI. We know our students need to be able to use these tools. They're going to be part of their world, and we're absolutely embracing it. We're encouraging our staff, we're encouraging our students to use them. To the other end of the spectrum, we are banning the use of generative AI and not encouraging students and staff to use these tools because we're concerned about academic integrity.
Sure.
So you've got the complete spectrum across, even within the same country, you have a complete spectrum, but there are very different reactions in different parts of the world. And then, as you've already observed, within an individual organization, you will have some people who will be enthusiastic, early adopters, and others who will be deeply apprehensive, perhaps because they're concerned about safeguarding issues or about privacy, about what happens with the data that the AI uses. Perhaps they're concerned about the AI taking aspects of their job that they don't want to lose. It's multiple reasons for excitement and concern. And yeah, you're going to have that within a single institution as well. And that's a huge challenge for particularly people who are managing higher education institutions, to know how that institution should respond and then how to deal with the multiplicity of reactions, challenges, concerns experienced and expressed by the members of their community.
So my observation, and I worked in 2 higher education places as an outsider, as a contractor, and as a consultant. There is a good percentage of people in there, especially in the staff, that they've got long years tenure in there, meaning that they're already fully immersed in the current manual environment. And so highly likely, they will see the risk or the threat to their current jobs in that. So you've got this another layer of complexity to it. But one thing that I've observed about AI, unlike all the change that I've seen in my lifetime, for whatever reason, I've got this feeling, and I can't put my finger on it, is that AI is going to ignore what you feel, and AI is going to go ahead anyway. So it's not quite like climate change, whether you're going to accept it or not. This is actually happening. I think it's in the best interest for everyone is to really approach it and at least understand the potential it can provide you rather than the threat it can pose to you. Am I being too optimistic here?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Everybody does need to engage with AI because it's not going away. And one of the primary reasons it's not going away is because it's making a lot of money for a few people, and those few people are very powerful. Yeah. Now, that's a very different driver to climate change, as you've used as a comparison. So we see many people engaging with developing artificial intelligence applications, and there's no question that it is changing the world of work and that it will change the world of education.
Yes.
What I think is really interesting in your observation about tenured staff is that that's actually a point of stability.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think it's important to recognize at times of great change, as you'll know much better than I, where you have points of stability, to explore those points of stability, to see actually how they can help people better deal with the fact that a lot is going to change. You know, what is really stable, what isn't really stable, what is going to change, and where can we give people consistency that they can recognize that help them make their way through the inevitable discomfort and bumpiness of change. Because I think that is an inevitability, that this current period, and we're seeing it already, and I think it's not going to change immediately or very quickly, to be honest. It is uncomfortable. It is bumpy. We don't know exactly how what AI brings is going to pan out. We can't predict accurately, precisely how the AI technologies are going to develop, how people are going to accept them, how they're going to apply them, how we're going to leverage them, how they're going to be misused, abused, and what impact that will have on the way that the technologies are or are not accepted. There's lots of unpredictable issues at the moment, and that makes for a bumpy road, doesn't it? Particularly, as I say, for people who are trying to manage educational organizations and deal with navigating a way through this very uncertain path of unknowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns.
Yes.
A lot of uncertainty.
The universities that you talked about, those universities and that they have certain level of evangelism around the AI and the use of AI. What would be their strategy to embed AI in their universities and helping their people understand and adopt those changes?
It's a really interesting question. I would hope that any university who is looking to embrace artificial intelligence, firstly, would look beyond generative AI.
Yeah.
Generative AI is the trigger for the current situation, but artificial intelligence is about a lot more than generative AI, and there are many other valuable forms of artificial intelligence that can be used within higher education. I would hope that a higher education institution who's looking to embrace AI would start with their own vision and mission and ask themselves whether anything's changed. It may be that actually their vision and mission is precisely the same, and that artificial intelligence has not made it necessary to change that vision, but what artificial intelligence might have done is provided ways in which they can achieve that vision more quickly, more effectively, more efficiently, in a more equitable manner that meets the needs of a more diverse population. So I think the key is to take a strategic view on artificial intelligence, to look at the existing vision of an institution, to ask the question, do we need to change that vision or not? As I say, I think in many instances, the vision itself will still be sound. Then the question is, how can AI help us achieve this vision more effectively, more impactfully, perhaps more cheaply? So it's that strategic perspective that I think will inevitably be at the heart of all higher education institutions who effectively embrace artificial intelligence.
So, Rose, what I hear you say is that vision and strategy should not really change that much. Is the introduction of AI should actually make the vision even more achievable through a smart way of achieving it. Have I got this right?
I think an organization needs an AI strategy.
Yes.
But that strategy should speak to the vision,
yeah.
and be looking to help that organization achieve that vision. As I say, more quickly, more effectively, more impactfully. That's up to the institution to decide. What do they want the AI to do for them? And I think part of that decision will be, not surprisingly, dictated by where that institution is at the moment. For example, with respect to the technology infrastructure within that institution, for example, with respect to the capability and capacity of the people who work in that institution to leverage the technology infrastructure that already exists and to be able to embrace new technologies, new AI technologies that will come their way. I think a good way to consider this situation is to think about the different units of an organization, not just the teaching and learning units, which is where we often start the conversation, very important indeed, but to think about all the different units of that organization and to ask the question for each of those, is this a unit where AI could help us achieve our objectives, our aims more effectively, perhaps more cost effectively, more impactfully? And then any decisions will be dependent, of course, on that infrastructure, both in terms of the technical infrastructure and the human resource infrastructure, and its ability to make that AI have an impact in that particular area of the organization. And then I think it's about iterating. Each time you have a successful example of applying, implementing artificial intelligence within an organization, an area of an organization, then you can learn from that. You can look at the extent to which that's built people capacity within the organization, the extent to which it's built technical capacity within the organization. And then what's the next stage in that? Where's the next area where you can learn from this example and move forward? I think you have to see it as an iterative process because it's too big to do all at once. And so you need to have a very strategic approach, but to be realistic about the need to iterate. Go for some small wins, learn from those, iterate again, but consistently with that overarching strategic mission to achieve the vision of the organization empowered by artificial intelligence. And I should say, of course, that a big part of a successful implementation, indeed a successful design, development and implementation of an AI strategy requires very effective governance, because we've already recognized that there are lots of challenges associated with artificial intelligence. So as well as the enthusiasm and the looking for positive wins, we have to be realistic and make sure right from the start that we are considering ethical implications, that we're putting in place the right kind of policies and governance infrastructure to ensure that the way in which AI is implemented within the organization is one that we feel is sound, that we can defend, that we can feel proud of.
I want to just double click a little bit on the idea of a strategy. AI is going, development is going very fast. And you and I know that technology is always going to be ahead of people. So we're always just behind the eight ball. And that's the nature of things. In higher education, what would be the ideal thing? Like, do we have the luxury to think 3 to 5 years anymore, or is that going to be a shorter term?
That's a really interesting question. I think in terms of having a fully implemented and effective and evaluated AI strategy, 3 to 5 years is still a reasonable time frame. But you would be expecting to see some results within a year, because you need to be developing those applications, those initial iterations from which you learn and on which you build. And I think you've already made this point, and I think it's such an important one that I want to repeat it, that of course it will always be about the people. And so a key part of what's needed is that capacity building. Now, again, it's a challenge. Where do you start? Can we build capacity in everybody right from the word go? Probably not. Where do you start? Strategically, where's it important for you as an organization to invest time and money in upskilling members of your community so that they can lead the way in terms of embracing AI and putting in place what you want to happen as you develop this iterative approach to applying, implementing, and evaluating your AI applications.
When the internet came into being, it lifted our level of education. Is this another wave after the internet?
Yes, I think it's qualitatively different to the internet, although I think your question is absolutely valid and important in terms of the scale of change the internet brought about. The reason I say I think this is qualitatively different is because artificial intelligence strikes at what makes us human. We pride ourselves on our human intelligence, and here is a technology that's challenging us as humans. And demonstrating that it can do things that perhaps we thought only we could do. And I do think that is qualitatively different in terms of the impact it has on people. But nevertheless, I agree with you in terms of the scale transformation that the internet precipitated. Yes, I do think this absolutely will transform much of what we do at work, the way we learn, the way we work, how we live. But it's really important that we remember that at the moment, and hopefully forever, humans are in charge. And that's another reason why we need to make sure that we upskill people as quickly as possible to have a really good basic understanding of artificial intelligence. We don't need everybody to be able to build AI. That's not the general need. Of course, we want some people to be specialists, but we want everybody to have that general understanding so that they can engage with the technologies and they can engage with how those technologies are applied, used, and regulated.
I find it interesting, Rose, that some organizations worry that their students' work and the integrity of the work will be at risk if they start using AI and all of that. And I always find it curious because I think at some stage the students will start expecting that their universities are actually AI enabled.
I think you're right. I understand why people within higher education would initially have found the prospect of generative AI a real challenge, because as institutions, we tend to have our assessment methodologies, our protocols, our processes put in place quite a long time in advance of the assessment actually happening itself. And therefore, it's not easy to just change those things overnight, because we now have a tool that has demonstrated that it can complete many of those assessments to a high standard. So I understand, of course, that was a big challenge, and many universities worked extraordinarily hard to find a way of dealing with that immediate challenge. But I think now that immediate challenge, I wouldn't say it's been totally dealt with, but we have processes, there are policies, there are approaches that can be taken. Then we come to the more important question about the assessment and students' expectations, which I agree, I think will grow, that they should be required to use these technologies as part of their learning, because they're going to be required to use these technologies in many instances as part of their jobs. And so not engaging with the technology disadvantages those students from the kind of employment that they may wish to seek. So personally, I look at it through two very particular lenses, and I'm sure there are many more too. But my two are, the first one is, we should always ask ourselves with any assessment, what is it we're actually trying to assess here? And it has to be something more than an AI tool can produce, given that that AI tool does not understand a word it produces or anything about any images that it produces. It's good at collating bits of information, but there is no understanding or relationship between those words and the real world. Surely we want more from our students. So I think we have to be careful that the way we design assessments is done to assess what we're really trying to assess. And secondly, I think the existence of AI should mean that we require even higher standards. If we're going to say to students, okay, you need to produce this assignment, go away and use AI and tell me how you've used AI and how it's enabled you to achieve something more than you could have done without AI, then we're helping them to see how they can leverage these powerful technologies to improve their lives, to improve the way that they're able to do their jobs in the future. Do you see what I mean?
I like this and I love it. And the reason why I love it, because then it means that I'll share with you a personal story very quickly. I took my son, he was 8, I think, to the gym to show him what I work out at the gym. And then I showed him the weights and I showed him the big weights. And I said to him, these are the heavy ones I can't lift. And he said to me, you mean you're not strong enough to lift them? And so that comment made me think is actually not the weight, it's my level of strength. So what he's saying is that AI can challenge the way we teach. It will probably help us to reimagine the whole education experience. And that instead of us trying to limit AI capabilities, we need to think about the way we want to deliver the learning experience. Am I close to what you said?
Absolutely, because the real crux of this for me is that what's happening now with artificial intelligence is a wake-up call to us as humans to recognize that we need to be so much smarter. Our intelligence hasn't finished evolving. We're still evolving. And this is now a moment in time when we have to step up and say, okay, we've now got these smart tools. Now, how much more intelligent are we going to become so that we can constantly stay ahead, develop ever more intelligent tools to help us to become more intelligent? And for me, where better should that conversation happen than in a higher education institution? Surely that is the place where we need to do that significant, considered, thoughtful specification of the nature of the relationship we want to exist between human and artificial intelligence. And surely the role of the AI has always to be to make sure that we are constantly becoming more intelligent ourselves. It's a real challenge. And I think the real challenge is to higher education to think about the future of human intelligence. A lot of the focus is on artificial intelligence, but actually, I think where we need to focus our attention is on human intelligence.
One of the things that I started thinking about today, I am involved in a thinking paper on AI in higher education, is that research gets its grants from government bodies and agencies. I have a feeling that those government bodies and agencies will start expecting to grant more in the AI space than in the areas where AI is not being utilized. Would you think that will happen?
It does seem likely, doesn't it? I imagine what we're going to see is quite an interesting situation because, of course, there's also quite a lot of investment in research being done by commercial organizations.
Yes.
And of course, the drivers behind a lot of that research are quite different to the drivers that might sit behind more independently funded research, as we would call it, research funded by charitable bodies or by governments, nations. So I would certainly hope that there will be more investment. But I hope that investment isn't just in the technology, because I think fundamentally it also needs to be in areas like neuroscience and psychology and the study of human intelligence, because that's something that requires intense focus at the moment. Because what the current situation shows in sharp relief is the way that we're very easily persuaded that we have machines that can behave in human intelligent ways.
I want to ask you a personal question. How do you use generative AI yourself?
I use lots of different types of AI, actually. Yeah. But you asked about generative AI specifically, so I'll start with that. I use it quite a lot for helping me work with existing text. So for reformatting text, for improving pieces of text, for transforming a document that may be in one form to a document in another form, for collating information, for searching for specific pieces of information. And I think the reason I focus on those kinds of tasks for generative AI in the form of large language models is because the actual process of writing is quite precious to me. Yeah. I like the process of writing. I want to do the writing. Okay, I don't necessarily mean writing the latest policy for this or writing something quite operational. That's something that AI can certainly help with. But the actual process of writing as a way of helping us to understand what we're thinking, what we believe, what we want to communicate, that's very valuable. And I would never want an AI to do that for me. But other forms of AI are also extremely useful. I use speech to text a huge amount. I dictate a lot.
Yes.
Because I find that personally super helpful. That's another form of AI. So, yeah, I definitely see AI as a tool that can help me be more productive, can make some of the perhaps more tedious tasks easier for me. So, yeah, I use it a lot.
I use ChatGPT for two purposes, and I find really useful. Well, there's a third purpose. When I travel overseas, it tries me the itinerary for the day and what I'm going to have, and it helps me. So it's been really. It was my companion in Europe in June for 5 weeks, and I don't need to think about a lot of planning and all of that. It can do it all for me. But these one way that I discovered that I can make the best out of it. It helps me ask better questions. So if I'm going to go to a meeting and I'm like you, I write, like I go and have coffee and I plan my day and I write, I need to write it. And so I formulate a list of questions in my head and then I can put them in there and then I can see alternatives. And I think that can sharpen my questioning technique because only through good questions I can get good knowledge. So that's one. And the second thing is that sometimes I am tired and I don't have anybody to bounce off ideas with. It can validate some of the information, but also it can pick up some gaps in there that I haven't really thought about in my profession. But apart from that, highly likely I will take a couple of points from it. It's like I'm talking to a coach. And the coach, have you considered this and have you considered that? And but certainly I know that there's an AI, but there's only one Ali Juma like me. You know, I am the summary of 55 years of experience in life that AI will never replicate. It can do faster things certainly than me, but certainly it won't replicate the nuance that I have in everything I look at.
I love both of your examples, which are about helping you to be smarter and more intelligent. And I love that reflection about humanity and what it means to be human and what it means to be human intelligence, because that's absolutely what matters. And that's what we need to focus our attention on, making sure that we value and making sure that we build now that we have very smart AI tools that can help us. And yeah, you liken it to a coach. I think that's a good analogy. I see it as a really fast assistant who can whiz around and collects information for me, but I always need to keep an eye on them because they get things wrong and they're not as smart as they think they are.
And also, I forgot to say that AI helps me improve my golf swing as well. So I take a video and I give it the video and it can analyze it. I still have my own coach, but I did say to him the other day, at some stage I'm going to fire you because I've got far more accurate information than you and faster as well and available for me whenever I need it. So that's a funny example, but which means that my golf coach can spend 10 minutes with me rather than spending an hour and probably charging the same thing. So there's an advantage for them as well when it comes to practice. We are coming close to the end of the podcast. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, Rose, and you gave me quite a few things that I really haven't thought about. So, which I'm going to go and think about more, especially around reimagining the education experience. A question that I usually ask, what would be if you were to advise a council for a university about the application of an AI strategy or formulating an AI strategy? What would be the top 2 or 3 things that you will give them as a piece of advice?
I think the key thing is to be strategic, to accept that there's a lot of noise at the moment and you need to acknowledge that noise and that noise is making people anxious and deal with that anxiety so that you can then focus on being very strategic and being strategic about the whole of AI, not just generative AI. So that strategic approach, I think, is super important. But of course, recognizing the fact that you've got to deal with the human anxiety that the noisy ChatGPT and similar have caused. Looking at AI more broadly would be the second point. And the third point would be that focus on capability building capacity with the individuals within the organization, because they are the people that will actually help bring about positive change through AI. So that has to be a priority, building capacity within the individuals, within the organization, so that they understand enough about AI so that they can use it and they can help you to develop those clear applications, those impactful use cases that are going to help you build that iterative approach to implementing AI in a strategic way.
Fantastic. I want to read you something that Toby Lutka, who is the CEO for Shopify, said, and he said people should make it's a bit of a riddle, but that's why I always read it to get it right. People should make decisions based on the decision they assume the company in 5 years from now wishes they would have made. I needed to have 2 glasses of wine to understand it, but the idea is that go to the future, think about that, and come back to the present and make your decisions. And
that's why the vision is so important.
Yes.
Whatever you do, you have to be driven by that vision and that strategic approach. I completely agree.
And that talks to your focus on the strategic approach. Thank you so much for your time, Rose. It's been a pleasure having you in my podcast. How would people connect and reach out to you?
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Ali. It's been great. I love talking about these things. And I think some of the issues that we've covered are really important too. People can reach me probably most easily on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way for people to find me.
And we're going to put all the information about you, Rose, and the podcast information. It's been a pleasure having you in my podcast, The Inner Game of Change. I hope to get you back at some stage as a regular guest on my podcast to keep us updated on the exciting world of AI. And who knows, I'm going to use AI to make me a better father. So who knows? And until then, stay well, Rose, and stay safe, and enjoy your visit in Sydney.
Thank you.
That's where I am in Australia. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode valuable, remember to subscribe to stay updated on upcoming episodes. Your support is truly appreciated, and by sharing this podcast with your colleagues, friends, and fellow change practitioners, you can help me reach even more individuals and professionals who can benefit from these discussions. Remember, change is an enduring force, and collectively we have the capacity to navigate it more effectively. Stay motivated, keep expanding your knowledge, and be the positive change contributor in your circles and work. Until next time, thank you for being part of the Inner Game of Change community. I am Ali Jama, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast.
Very enjoyable, really nice discussion. I think it grew organically as you wanted, and hopefully we covered some of the kind of main points that people are perhaps interested in asking themselves about, key questions that I think higher education organisations and academics, but also professional staff members might be thinking about when it comes to AI. Yes. Yeah, and I hope it's useful for your audience for sure.
I'm sure it will be, Rose. I'm sure it will be.